So this is Matt Ringel, writer of the Fallen comic, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's March 30th, 2021. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Matt Ringel about Fallen. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and it's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Matt is from the Ottawa, Ontario region. He's the creator and writer of the Fallen series that was originally considered as a novel. In his off time, Matt plays D&D and co-hosts a podcast called Nerdium. Fallen number 3 is a full-color issue that's part of the ongoing series and blends the genres of mystery, thriller, and fantasy by creating a thrilling mythological detective story. The story takes place in the vibrant synth-pop-filled era of the 1980s in the loud, crowded streets of New York City. Written by Matt, Fallen number 3 features art by Henry Ponciano from Alterna Comics, Tinseltown, The Devil Within, and Seven Legions, with letters by Tobin Rasico, Beastlands, The Wild Cosmos, Thorn Squadron, Menagerie, Rumble Kings, and Crown and Anchor. So without further ado, here's my chat with Matt Ringel about Fallen. Matt Ringel, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. What I normally do to start off the interview is ask the creator about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
Off the top of my head, I can't recall exactly which one it was, but I remember it was a Superman back from early 90s, maybe even late 80s.
Cool. Yeah, good stuff there. And you're a writer, so I'm wondering who influences your work today?
All kinds. There's some classical kind of, not classical, but more like the fan favorites, like the Stephen King's. Recently, I've been on a big Neil Gaiman kick. For comics, there's some Canadian writers like Lonnie Nadler and Zach Thompson. They're just killing it there.
Yeah, that's a very good influences to have, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. So we're here talking about your latest project, which is Fallen. So I wonder if you could tell me a bit more about it and maybe the origins of it as well.
Okay, so Fallen is a mythological noir. It takes place in the 1980s, so it kind of has a synth kind of vibe to it. It focuses on kind of a gangland mafia style, except it goes around the mythology side where it's all a bunch of gods that are kind of running the gangland. So it's all different gods from different backgrounds. So the first couple issues focused mostly on the Greek and Norse gods. Issue 3 that's coming out is introducing the Shinto gods. So it's kind of like a Scarface meets Clash of the Titans kind of thing.
Oh, wow. So you're a big fan of different mythologies then?
I am, yeah. I love history, love mythology. Really enjoyed kind of a lot of the 80s classics too. So like a lot of inspiration comes from a lot of the 80s movies.
Mm-hmm. Did you watch any of those Ray Harryhausen movies of Sinbad and that type of thing?
Yeah, the practical special effects were pretty awesome even for these standards of today.
Yeah, definitely inspirational, that's for sure. Good stuff. So, as we mentioned before, you're the writer of this series, but I'm wondering who else you brought on to help you with it.
So my artist is Henry Ponciano. He has some published works with Alterna Comics. He does Tinseltown and Vampire Hunting Brigade, I think it's the other title. He's pretty talented. He's also very good at he'll read over my script and he'll kind of have some feedback once in a while, and he'll let me know if something sparks in his mind. So it's kind of a back and forth a little bit. And then I also have Tobin Rasico as my letterer. So Tobin's been on other indie projects like Beastlands, and he's got a few other things he's got going on right now too.
Yeah, Emulator, we were just chatting the other night about that. That's coming out pretty soon, so that's good. Now, have you worked with these folks before? Because I know this is issue number 3. Did they work on your previous 2 books?
Yeah, so both of them have been on board since the first issue. and they both plan on being on board right up until the end. It's going to be a 6-part series at this point, and they're both on board right till the end for it.
So you got the stories all laid out.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, very good. Very good. I know sometimes when you get the artist involved, as you mentioned already with number 3, you get some artistic feedback that sometimes could change the way the story is leaning. Have you found that at all when you're working with your various contributors?
No. Tobin's really good with adding a couple of things just to make the dialogue flow a little bit better. And Henry throws in a couple of things to just kind of add a little bit more depth to some of the characters that I may have kind of glossed over on the side characters. But all 3 of us working together were able to kind of come up with a pretty good concept.
Great. Now, as this is number 3 of a Kickstarter, you must be an expert by now. So I was wondering, for those who might be considering Kickstarter, do you have any advice, any tips or tricks?
Yeah, so as with indie publishing or indie writing, there's a lot of different things you have to learn as you go. And Kickstarter has been one of those things that I've had to kind of learn on the run. People don't necessarily have to have a huge following to be successful on Kickstarter, but it's important to have somewhat of a network that you can reach out to. You hear from the pros all the time saying it's important to have a strong mailing list, and it does help. I found what also helps is reaching out to other creators, kind of building that relationship, and then seeing if they can kind of do a little bit of a signal boost for you while their campaign's live too. And you kind of do like a cross promotion. I found that actually works really well. Another thing that's also really important that I've learned the hard way with Kickstarter is make sure that your budget's really kind of nailed down. The first issue, I was willing to take a pretty big hit just to get the project out because it's a project of a passion and I really wanted it to kind of see the light of day. The second one, I tried to balance the budget a little bit more, but I ran into some issues with COVID, unfortunately, and it ate up my budget with shipping. So, But yeah, it's important to kind of make sure that you are very aware of your budget. And again, I couldn't stress enough that do your research when you're planning your shipping costs.
Right. Now, I know that there's sometimes for Kickstarters, there's premiums that people have incentives, like maybe a special cover or that sort of thing. Do you find that those are helpful in the long run when you're trying to promote your project?
It really depends on project to project. Some of them I see out there that very bare bones, very basic projects that just basically offer a physical issue and a digital issue, and they're quite successful. And then I see other ones that maybe have like 4 or 5 different variant covers, and those ones are also successful. But like I think it just really depends on the project and the quality that you're putting out.
Right. Yeah. So definitely put in time. I'm hearing plan ahead and budget, I think, is the key factor. I think you're saying there too.
Yeah. When I got into it thinking I just write the comic and then the rest will kind of fall into place, it was very wrong. There's a lot of moving pieces you have to figure out. And then you have to kind of learn the back end business side of it too. So you have to learn the marketing, the promotions, figuring out even the price that you want to charge for your comic can be a headache sometimes.
Wow. So coming up with an idea isn't that in itself. There's a lot more to it then.
Yeah.
So you're doing number 3 of Fallen. I'm wondering what's next for you. You mentioned that there's other issues coming down the road. Do you have it mapped out as to when you might be doing that next issue?
Yeah. So all the issues are kind of laid out. The script for issue 4 is actually started. 3's done. It's ready to go. The artwork has started for 3, so it's all set, ready. Fallen 4, I was planning on launching later this year, but I think it might take a pause for the rest of the year. I have another project that's in development that is in the early stages, but it might be the one that launches in the late fall.
Right. Sounds good. So I'm wondering where people can find you online, your current project, and to find out more about your future projects as well. Where do you recommend they go?
So you can always follow me on Twitter at Bad Beaver Comics. You can also sign up for my mailing list at badbeavercomics.com. And if you're interested in checking out Fallen, it'll be coming on Kickstarter very shortly. But you can always check out thefallencomic.com, and that will direct you to the Kickstarter page.
Great. Well, Matt, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering if there's something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview.
I would just like to say that if you have something like a little kind of passion project that you want to work on, or if you think that something isn't worth trying, just try it anyways. Like right now, it's important to try and find those things that keep you kind of interested. For me, writing and comic book writing is completely different from my regular life, so it's a whole other thing, but it's a nice outlet to kind of stay positive with.
Thanks to Matt for the chat. You can discover more about Matt on Twitter at Bad Beaver Comics and online at badbeavercomics.com. You can discover more about Fallen on Kickstarter at thefallencomic.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2021.